The 80-20 rule, or Pareto Principle, is a concept that states that 80% of the outcomes in life can really be attributed to 20% of the causes. In a business sense, this would mean that 80% of our income is generated from 20% of our activity. So in order to really maximize revenue, we should focus on doing more of that 20% thing. Well, as it turns out, this principle can be applied to our development as composers. So we're going to unpack 5 ways to use this 80-20 rule to boost our careers in production music, as well as talk about some pitfalls to watch out for if this all goes sideways. That and more on this week's episode of the 52 Qs podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by a member of the 52 Qs community, and this week, we're going to take a listen to an intense electronic tension cue written by Kris Claerhout, so you definitely want to stick around for that. If this is your first time here, welcome. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the audio podcast on the go, just want to thank you, for spending part of your day here with me. I also have to give a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Qs who help keep the podcast, the channel, and everything going. See, we are 100% community supported, so you're not going to hear ads for mattresses or meal plans, but if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52 Qs and also unlock extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description or stick around because we're going to be talking a little bit more about that later in today's episode. So let's start by unpacking the Pareto Principle. This is a principle that was put forth by Italian sociologist and economist Vilfredo Pareto, which essentially says that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. So whether it's fundraising, where 80% of the funds are raised by 20% of the donors, or whether it's your clients and 20% of your clients are generating 80% of the revenue, that's what the Pareto Principle is essentially about. But I wanted to unpack this in terms of production music, specifically as a career in production music. And I want to talk about how we, and give you 5 ways, how we composers can apply this principle to boost our careers, as well as some things to watch out for. So way number 1, focusing on the 20% of skills that are generating 80% of our output. 20% of our skill set that really generates 80% of our output. And so this is finding successful techniques which are proven to work for you. It could be a mixing or a mastering strategy because, in general, and I have found that a simple technique, straightforward, a method that works, and you can work it over and over and over again. Finding form and structure, cue form, finding that the vast majority of our cues follow in the same 20% of form. It's really only a handful of forms. So focus on learning those forms, whether it's ABA or whether it's trailer form or building form. There's really only a handful of forms that adhere to this. Also, realizing that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you sit down to write a cue. Use those skills, your skills in the DAW, your skills on an instrument. If you are really good at playing guitar, then put guitar on 80% of your cues. Yeah, we can branch out from there, but use the skills that you have that come to you most easily, that require only 20% of effort, if that makes sense. So for me, as a drummer and a percussionist, it is infinitely easier to put like a shaker to record an egg on a track. This takes less than 20% effort. where if I were to go try to find a shaker library or shaker loops and all of that, going into Splice or Apple Loop Library or VST and one shot, that would take up way too much time. So instead, because I have that skill, I use it repeatedly over and over on all my tracks. In fact, I keep shakers specifically right here on my desk for this very reason. Because that takes 20% effort and it absolutely yields much, much more than 80% result. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, if that makes sense. Well, the downside of this is making sure that as you're learning new skills, you don't go down a rabbit hole. Like I am really bad about this. I recently got so enamored with claw hammer banjo technique because I have a banjo ukulele hanging up back there, and it's fascinating. And I put a lot of time into learning it, but I didn't really have a home for it. I mean, I'm working on, Americana dramedy cues, but I'm definitely not a banjo player. And so watching YouTube videos, going down that rabbit trail of always trying to learn new techniques and everything, that can be kind of a black hole that I think we should be really super careful about. And also making sure that we don't go into the mindset of always being a student. Yes, we are always learning, but if you are always just looking to vacuum up new information and aren't really applying it, then that's when that 80%, you're spending 80% of your time learning things that you might only use on 20% of your cues. Can we flip that? Can we find skills and techniques that we use on 80% of our cues and only take 20% effort? Just yesterday, during one of our feedback and critique sessions, there was we have a guitar player who is in the community, and another guitar player played this amazing, cue that had this really well done guitar part that sounded completely authentic. Come to find out, he was using a guitar MIDI controller to fire guitar samples. And it sounded super authentic, much more authentic than you could recreate on a piano keyboard. And so there was another family member hanging out in the Zoom chat and said, well, I never put together that I could use a guitar MIDI controller to fire guitar samples to get a much more believable performance. Because he's a guitarist. He understands guitar. So if he can put a MIDI controller in his hands that allow him to utilize that 20% of effort to yield 80% results, then absolutely. So finding techniques that work for you, that come out of you, that come easier to you, and then doing those over and over. So that's the first thing. Focus on your most effective skills. Number 2, prioritize high-value cues and projects. And what I mean by that is focus on writing the types of cues that bring you the most success, not necessarily the most in demand, because that gets us into a rabbit hole. See, the first point here. But find a cue that you can do really well, that excites you, that takes that 20% effort, almost like, wow, it almost writes itself. It can't be this easy, can it? Well, find those cues and work them over and over. Because you don't have to write all the cues. You know that, right? You don't have to be able to write every single type of cue that was ever written, and not even in a specific genre. Let's say you write hip hop cues. You don't have to learn how to write every subgenre of hip hop. I do sports broadcasting, and I don't have to learn how to write and learn guitar, even though I have guitars on the wall, rock cues, rock guitar cues. Instead, I'm going to bring a collaborator in or something, but Me spending time learning rock guitar so I can put them on rock sports cues that's 80% time yielding 20% results. And I need to flip that. So, what types of cues do you most enjoy writing, and what types of cues are getting placed? And do more of those. Because one of the things that I learned going to the PMA conference and going to the road rally is talking to libraries. Libraries aren't necessarily, I don't think they're looking for a jack of all trades. I think they're looking for people, composers who are passionate about one or two things and can do those one or two things really well. And yeah, expand beyond that. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we take, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour concept to be a master at one thing. I'm not convinced that you could be the highest level in like 9 or 10 different genres. I don't know. I don't know. That's a philosophical question, because I know we have viewers and listeners who are extremely talented, very successful. And there's an argument to be made. In fact, I've made it on this channel before, is this isn't necessarily art with a capital A. And so does it require the same creative lift? Not necessarily. But I don't know. I'm feeling the writing on the wall here with AI, with how much more production music is in the composing community's consciousness. And one of the things I've seen over the last year, really, is libraries looking for unique sounds. I don't think they're necessarily looking for like 100% original, because dramedy needs to kind of be in a dramedy lane. Americana needs to be in a, right? But they're looking for unique qualities. And I don't know how much you can develop a super unique quality across 10 to 20 different genres. So yeah, now the downside of this, of just focusing on the one or two things you do well, is boredom, is never growing out of that comfort zone. And this is on me. I mean, this is one of my things, is you just kind of stay in your lane because it's comfortable, and you fear change, or you resist change, and that can be really, really tough. That can be tough. And if you just do the same type of cue over and over, man, that can lead to burnout. That could even lead to writer's block, which can lead to resistance and all of those things. And that's not a great place to be in. But if you're just focusing on the things that you can do well, which we should, but that's all you do. Remember, it's the 80-20 principle, not the 100-0 principle. So you need to give the 20% of your time, or the 80%. No, I got that backwards. You need to give the other percentage of effort that you have left over into skill development, creative satisfaction, experimentation, all of those things. So that happens in the margins of your time set aside after you've done the thing that can fulfill the 80% of your return. But yeah, doing like my first contract with Discovery Channel had me doing 3 dramedy albums, hip hop dramedy, 45 cues. And man, about halfway through that last album, I was on fumes, man, trying to come up with unique ways to be unoriginal. Wow, I say that, I'm not even sure I agree with it. Unique ways to be unoriginal. That feels like heresy, doesn't it? Almost feels like heresy. So that's the second way. First is focus on your most effective skills that yield 80% of results with 20% of effort. Way number 2 is prioritizing high value cues, the cues that come back to you, that are in demand, that you can do, and that are starting to see a lot of traction. Way number 3, the 80/20 principle applied to relationships, networking, building your libraries. I think, and I know this is absolutely true for me, is I have 20% of my library relationships are 100% giving me 80% of my results, if not more, if I'm being honest, which we'll talk about the downside here in a minute. But, you got to dance with the girl what brought you, right? You've got to serve the clients, serve the publishers who are already in your corner, that are already ready and willing, and they want your music. And this is fundamentally how I got a little upside down with my year of taxi. In fact, this is what really kind of effervesced this in my consciousness, talking about, like, I feel like I'm pumping 80% effort into the year of taxi. There was 20% returns, 20% results, if not less, as far as getting calls from libraries and everything. But even more, my time, I was giving 80% of focus, and the libraries over here who needed more focus, they weren't getting it. And so the libraries that do generate 80% of my income weren't even getting 20% of my focus. And so that was how I realized I got kind of turned around, got sideways with taxi. And it was through this conversation, talking with other folks in the community, that I even heard of the fact that this was called the Pareto Principle. I just knew it as the 80/20 rule. Don't pump in 80% of your effort to something that's only yielding 20% of your returns. So focus on those beneficial professional relationships that lead to more opportunities and advancement, getting placements in libraries, relationships. And this happens by going to things like the Production Music Conference, as well as the PMA Zoom sessions are fantastic. And when you go to those Zoom sessions, don't cast a huge wide net. Don't spam your LinkedIn page or your website or whatever. Just be cool, be chill. There's probably 1 or 2 people that you're resonating with, and kind of say, I'd like to reach out to that person. This happened at my very first PMA Zoom networking event. I saw a smiling face in the Zoom room. I'm like, that guy, I love the energy of that guy, and I want to get to know that person. Come to find out, we were put in the same breakout room together, and he was thinking the exact same thing about me. He's like, yeah, I would love to introduce myself to that person. Come to find out, it's Micah Christian. And we've been friends ever since. We had a meetup in LA for the Production Music Conference. And yeah, but focusing on 1 or 2 people that I don't know, this is too pseudo spiritual or whatever, but you just kind of get a vibe, just the vibe. Now, the downside of this, of focusing on 80% of, or putting and focusing on the libraries which are just generating the 80%, is you really run the risk of putting all your eggs in one basket. If you have one library who is hitting home runs, then yes, feed that beast. However, success could be fleeting, easy come, easy go. And so you might find yourself looking at some low royalty statements. And because you haven't been planting seeds along the way this whole time, then you might find yourself upside down. They have a down quarter, a down year, and now you're kind of scrambling. And so that could be really challenging. And, smaller opportunities, smaller libraries, newer libraries, they might lead to bigger opportunities. Who knows? And if you're, let's say you're only looking at libraries which are big, like the big Warner Chapels, the APMs, right? The 5 Alarms, the Atomica, right? These big guys, Universal, BMG. But you might have a indie label over here, an indie publisher who's ready to absolutely go to bat for you. So relying on that small network could really lead to a lack of diversity in your contacts, limiting your perspective, and really missing out on things you never expected. So that's way number 3, applying the 80-20 principle to networking and building your relationships. Way number 4 is using the 80-20 principle in the tools and equipment that you're already using. And this kind of goes back into point number 1, which was about the skills and doing the thing that you're good at. But stated another way, get to know the tools you have and focus on the tools that generate the best, easiest, lowest effort result. And this is Ozone for me, for mastering. I know it's not tip top. I know folks who are producing like Grammy winning albums or whatever, or film scores and all of that stuff, they're probably not using Ozone. But then again, they're probably not writing in headphones in a room over a garage in Orlando. So let's keep some perspective here. But for me, using Ozone, I can absolutely get 80% or more results from 20% or less effort. Sprinkle in some AI tools in there. I mean, that's where I think the real strength of AI is. And I'm talking with Ozone. I think it's called the mastering assistant, right? You just click it and it does its thing, bleep, bloop, bleep, bloop, bleep. And then you get really darn close, like frighteningly close. But for demos and for scratch tracks and just green lighting cues for libraries and up to my publishers, it's been kind of a game changer. And it's taken, in general, Ozone in general has taken my mastering process from hours to really less than an hour. And you plug in the skills from part 1, I'm using the same mixing techniques on every single track, understanding that certain tracks, have their idiosyncrasies. Like if I'm doing a hip hop cue with 808s, I'm going to mix that differently from a blues cue, for example. But I'm using the same tools. I'm using the same EQs, and I keep dipping back into the same well, the same plugins, the same string sounds. I know exactly what Symphobia strings can and can't do. And if there's something that I need that's not them, then I know where to go. But what I'm not going to do is every time I sit down to write a cue, hem and haw about, what string sound do I want in this cue? No, I'm going to start with Symphobia. Might not in there, but I'm going to start there. Learning the plugins that you have. Because investing in the equipment and investing in the time it takes to learn the gear, the tools, plugins, or whatever, can absolutely elevate the quality of your work and the efficiency in your output. Because we can really get into like gear acquisition syndrome, right? I'm looking at you like drummers and guitarists, I mean, geez, cymbals. Yes, I am a recovering cymbal-holic here. It's really not funny. There's cymbals like right back there. That's a container full of cymbals. I've got cymbals on the couch. I know it's a problem. It's a lifetime of being a drummer. You just keep adding cymbals. But at the end of the day, you don't need the new shiny. You don't always need the new shiny. I know the marketing is going to tell you there's going to be the whole FOMO, fear of missing out, the mystery box kind of marketing that some of the sample libraries use. And some of the things are really impressive, but they're probably not game-changing type plugins that you have to jump on, which then takes more time to learn and all of that. Because just a handful of really quality sounds that you know well, or instruments that you know well, can go a long way. I bought a ukulele on Amazon. It's like 40 or 50 bucks. Was not that expensive. And then I really took to it, invested some time. And so now I put ukulele on everything I can because it just comes naturally to me. However, guitar, and I have guitars and they look great, hanging in the background, but I'm not a guitarist. I am much more accomplished on ukulele than I am guitar. And I can do what I do, but I'm not going to dump a ton more time into learning ukulele. And I'm not going to dump a ton more resources in buying new guitars. Like, I'm not buying any new string libraries, because between BBCSO, VSL, and Symphobia, I feel like my bases are covered. Would it be good to have like one of the orchestral tools, Berlin, LA scoring strings, even Albion 1? Maybe, yeah. But I keep coming back to the tools that I know really, really well. Now, the downside to this that we have to be careful with is boredom. Just getting bored of our sounds, which could lead to kind of wanderlust, right? You're like, or we're using the same sound so many times that all of our cues kind of start sounding the same. Like I mentioned my problem with acquiring cymbals. Well, the good part of that is I can essentially, anytime I do a bowed cymbal thing, I can swap out different cymbals. Especially for my tension cues. If you're watching, I love me some bowed cymbal. But having multiple cymbals helps. But I wouldn't start off by buying 100 different cymbals. Otherwise, it's going to all kind of sound the same. It's a balance, isn't it? So instead of buying a new plugin, can you get your plugin to sound different? Are there ways that you can reuse the same plugin? And if it's a synth, I'd put money on the fact that there are probably parts of the presets that you've never listened to, if you're anything like me. I use Omnisphere, and I feel like there are edges to that map I've never seen, might not ever see. And I just got an email yesterday that we're adding 1,500 more presets for free. I'm like, yay. And oh man, that makes me tired thinking about it. So you don't have to have the most expensive equipment. You don't have to have the latest equipment. And regardless of what the sample makers say, you don't have to always buy the latest, greatest thing, unless it's solving a specific problem for you. Or one of the deals I have with Shannon is I'll only buy gear that I can immediately make money with. Like I bought the banjo ukulele here because I had an Americana project. And that's an Amazon ukulele. My most expensive ukulele is, let's see, that one there. That's a Martin ukulele. Martin ukulele. And it's really, really nice. But I keep going back to my Amazon one. You don't always have to have the new shiny thing. That's way number 4. Way number 5 is managing your time and energy and focusing on the 20% of your time that is yielding 80% of the results. And what I mean by this is making sure that you've budgeted your time appropriately, that your time is not just scheduled on the calendar, but you know exactly what you're going to accomplish in the time that you've had set aside. So instead of a 4-hour writing block where you're just kind of meandering, maybe watch YouTube here and there, whatever, or instead of a writing block where you're also going to, audition patches in the synth that you just bought, right? Or maybe in the synth that you've always had, but you've never explored. Well, maybe don't do that in the same block of time that you've blocked off for your writing. Instead, maybe make it an hour. And during that hour is deep, focused work. Set a timer, Pomodoro technique, whatever, but deep, focused time so that it's really maximizing that time. Again, if you're anything like me, I can get super distracted very easily. And so turning off notifications, going into do not disturb mode on the computer, that really, really helps me. But not blocking off giant amounts of time to accomplish something, but shorter amounts of time and dedicating myself to being more focused and really focusing on deep work. And find times during the day that work for you. Experiment with different times. For me, something that really unlocked my productivity was the miracle morning. I've talked about it before. Alarm goes off at 4 o'clock, 5 days a week, every weekday. And I'm usually in the studio by 5:30 at the latest after I've done my morning exercise and, shower and all of that. 5:30 at the latest. And if that doesn't work for you, then try something else. But experiment. The downside of this, the big downside of this, is if you don't have enough breaks, if you don't give yourself some kind of cognitive, creative downtime, this is a straight path to burnout. 100% path to burnout. Because if you sit down and every single hour of your day is meticulously planned out, then you will not have any kind of cognitive downtime, So you feel like you can just relax, you could just breathe, if you're eating every lunch in the studio, if you're taking breakfast in the studio, if you're working, if you're in your composition room, in your composition headspace until 7 and 8 o'clock every single night, not only is that really tough on your loved ones, the relationships in your life, whether they're partners, whether they're other family members, parents, or kids, or pets. And again, see how these all kind of overlap with things I've talked about before. Like, I don't believe that we should suffer, or we should make all of the relationships in our life suffer at the altar of the music. I think there needs to be balance there. And if you've, blocked off every single hour and you're trying to squeeze every single hour, remember the whole point of the 80-20 principle is to relax, is to identify the 20%, the things that take 20% effort to yield your 80% results. But if you've blocked everything and there's no air, there's no gaps or anything, if something goes sideways, let's say you have a kid call in sick, needs you to come pick them up. Let's say you have, an aging parent who you need to take to a doctor's appointment. That may be autobiographical. If you've not allowed yourself any breathing room or any flexibility, then that could lead to almost panic. And then you're just freaking out, trying to solve all of that. So that's where things could get kind of bad. Because if you're burned out, if you're creatively empty because you've not given yourself recharge time. Recently in my cues, I've been playing a lot of harmonica because I've been doing some blues harmonica stuff. And, if you don't allow yourself time to exhale, because with blues, it's inhale. That's what gives you the blues. It's called cross harp. Anyway, this isn't a harmonica technique show. So it's a lot of, you're inhaling the whole time. If you don't give yourself time to exhale, you will run out of air. You'll run out of oxygen. And so that amazing line that you were playing, you got nothing left. You got no gas left in the tank for the end of that line. And that kind of undoes all of the momentum leading up to it. I hope that makes sense. It made sense in my mind. And then more writer's block, more resistance, burnout. That's very, very related to what we were saying earlier. when you prioritize like the cues and doing only the things that are giving you the biggest result. So, number one is focusing on the skills that yield the biggest results. The 80% of your results are coming from 20% of your skill set. Next, 80% of your returns, 80% of your royalties are coming probably from 20% of your cues or projects that you're working on. Next, 80% of your placements are probably coming from 20% of your libraries. Number 4, 80% of your output in the tools are probably coming from 20% of your tool set. And then finally, 80% of your effort is coming within 20% of the time that you're investing. Something to think about. Something to think about. But how is the 80-20 principle working for you? Have you heard of it before? Have you heard of the 80-20 Pareto Principle? And if there's something that I missed, please let me know in the comments below. I absolutely want to hear from you. I read all those comments and make an effort to respond to those. But I would absolutely love to hear from you. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to hear an electronic intense tension cue written by community member Kris Claerhout. But first, here is Mrs. 52 Cues, Shannon Croft, to tell you all about how you can join the community.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52 Cues podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52 Cues isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52 Cues community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52cues.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52cues.com.
All right, that was Equalize, Intensify by Kris Claerhout. Thank you so much for sending this along. This was sent during our week 19 weekly feedback thread that we put weekly feedback threads together every single month. I really like this. Love all the sounds. The energy, I think, is absolutely working for us here. I do feel like it's pretty darn loud, to the point where here, maybe on the other side of this, feel like by the end we're actually clipping. It feels like it's actively distorting here. You can see our integrated LUFS is getting up into the -8s, and our RMS is getting up into the -6. So it feels like it's a little loud, and it feels a little overly squashed. And I loved the edit point that we have right here around 35 seconds, and I like it again at 115. I'm not sure we need the edit point that comes in around 55. I don't think we need that. I feel like it was a little, with them every kind of couple of phrases, it felt a little stoppy-starty, especially for something that's not an overt kind of trailer track. And I loved the energy that we brought here at the end. This little kind of almost, that's very cool. And I think that would have been really, really cool to maybe bring this section kind of in earlier. Maybe when you came out of your first edit point or stop down, right here. Maybe put it right there. I don't know. I really found myself liking this section here, and kind of wanted more of it. And it seems a shame to leave something which works really, really well this far at the end. I think you could almost kind of bend it into hip hop territory, in which case we would probably want to have the 808s, because we have an 808 right here. And do we have, yeah, it's more kind of a pad throughout here, but if we treated that more like an 808, I think that could be really effective. The other thing we would want to do if we want to bend this towards hip hop is, I think we need to chill out the snare right now. It's not consistently on the backbeats. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2. So it's like the and of beat 2, but we could make it, if we put it squarely on beat 3, I think that could be really, really effective. As it stands right now, we have so much syncopation happening with all of the pulses that the snare feels a little too needlessly syncopated. I do want to comment that you did indicate that this is a rough edit, and so I know it might not be the final mix. Here in this second section, that kick is a little it sounds a little rubber bally, like a big rubber bouncy ball. And it might just be it's too loud, and it's just it feels kind of hollow and rubbery kick, like it feels like a plastic head on a kick and hitting with a plastic beater. And so I maybe just roll off some of the highs on that, so it's not such a transient type of a kick sound. And I would roll it back in the mix for sure. Oh, and during these edit points, let's make sure that we don't have any delays or anything. We have kind of right in here. This is right around 36. It's not really a clean downbeat. Let me back it up and see if I can't kind of. Yeah, I'm having trouble finding that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, boom. Yeah, so we have that hit coming in right there is not on the downbeat, and I think we need to clean that up a little bit. It's like it's on the E of beat 1. It's a little wonky. And then things settle in. Once we get that kick drum in, then the pulse really lines up, and I think we're in good shape. Same thing going on right here. Yeah, I'm not sure you need that. If you want to put that type of a stop down, can we maybe do a boom, boom, reverse, something so it doesn't die down quite so much. That could be effective. Yeah, I would almost switch. I would switch these stop downs. I would put that one over here and I would put this one over there. That's absolutely how I would fix that. I think that could be really effective. And because I think there's more kind of building energy, and there's more building energy leading into that last section. And I feel like the stop down in the middle of this B section is a little distracting. I'm like wanting this to bend into hip hop territory, because that is really cool. And then a solid button ending. Would probably put a solid button ending, although I mean that ending's pretty effective. But libraries, in my experience, tend to want a boom kind of an ending, and you can keep this kind of thing and maybe have it as an alternate ending if they wanted that. But Kris, thank you so much for sending this along. As I mentioned, this was sent along during our week 19 weekly feedback threads. We put feedback threads together every single week, and this week we are collecting for week 20, and I will be choosing one of the cues from this list. So if that's something that you're interested in, then head over to 52 Cues and join us. It is free to sign up. And go ahead and post up your cue. If you found that feedback helpful and you would like a more direct feedback on your cues, this is something that I offer over at 52cues.com/coaching. I do feedback videos. And while you're there, you can also check out my other coaching services like one-on-one Zoom sessions. You can sign up to be notified when mastermind registration opens up, and it will be opening up within the next couple of weeks because it's almost time to start up our summer 2023 mastermind. So if that's something that you're interested in and really are looking to kind of push your career into the next level, then I think the mastermind is going to be for you. All right, so that's going to do it for us this week. You definitely want to tune in next week, where I'm going to be talking about PROs. ASCAP, CSEC, Gamma, Suiza, JazzRack, whatever. Let's talk about PROs, how they work, and how we get paid, and understanding just some things we need to get our brain around as composers. And so we're going to unpack PROs. But like I said at the top of the show, a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help make all of this possible. Please know that I love you and that I appreciate you. And another thing, I don't ask this often, but if you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a thumbs up. It really does help composers just like you find me. And you know what? If you hated it, if you hate me, if you hate my glasses or whatever, then downvote the crap out of this video. I'm totally fine with that. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you've had a fantastic week 20, and I know and trust, friends, that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2023 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52cues.com.